Okay, so let's go over two more examples just so we get the hang of it. Um, so far, the calculations that we've done involve getting a certain amount of money a certain amount of time in the future. Okay, but just one lump sum payment a certain amount of time in the future. But the question that I asked at the beginning of the lecture wasn't one payment a certain amount of time in the future. It was a stream of payments, $4,000 per week for the rest of your life. Okay. But we can apply the same concept, okay, because the present value of a bunch of different payments at different times in the future is just equal to the present value of each one of those payments individually, all added up. Okay. So let me show you guys this example. So let's suppose so we're still going with this 4,000 a week. Okay, so $4,000 a week times 52 weeks ends up being $208,000 per year. Okay. And so we basically have to just calculate the present value of $208,000 being paid annually for a number of years, let's say for the next 60 years. Okay. Well, okay, so let me go back over to this present value calculator here. Okay. Here, I've already have it filled out, but let's just look at one payment. Okay. So $208,000 being paid to you 1 year from now has a present value of, well, you can see, by the way, for all of this, I'm assuming an interest rate of 10%. Okay. So $208,000 per year, or for the first year, ends up being equal to a present value of a little bit less than that today, a little bit under 200 grand today. Okay. And you can see over here, now this is a running total. Okay, this will become useful as I add more payments. So, okay, so let's say that we're paid that amount of money again next year. Okay, so that's going to be 208, $208,000 for the second year. Okay, you can see the present value of that is significantly smaller. Okay, and if I were to let's just go all the way down here to year 60. Okay, you can see that basically what happens to the present value is the present value drops very steeply over time. Okay, if I were to graph this, okay, let me actually make a graph of this. Okay, you can see what's happening to the present value is it falls off very steeply as a function of time. And by the time you get to, 40, 50 years in the future, even though it's a lot of money, yeah, being paid, 200 grand in the future, 40 years in the future, it sounds like a lot of money. But once we take into account the effect of, interest rates, the present value is actually very small. Okay, and, by the time we get to year 60 rolls around, that amount of money that you're being paid 60 years from now has a present value of only a couple of $100. Okay, so so then if we take all of these payments, okay, and look at the present value of all of these and then add them up, okay, here's my running sum, you can see the number at the very end of this process is a little bit over, just a tiny bit over $2 million. Okay, so if we sort of round, there's 207, or $2,073,000. This is very close to the $2 million option. That was the other option in our example. Okay, so the present value of 5 grand a week for the rest of your life is very close to $2 million. So at some level, you could say that, that these two options, at least in present value terms, are essentially equivalent. Okay. Okay, let's do one more example, right? What's the present value of a college degree? Okay. So, well, we can think of that in a number of different ways, but let's kind of go with a very simple calculation. Okay, let's compare two alternatives. Alternative one, no college, but you're starting to work earlier. Okay, and so, and let's just assume that you earn the average pay for a non-college worker. Okay, option two is that you pay for 4 years of college, you don't work at all. Okay, but then you earn the average pay for a non-college worker. Or, I'm sorry, for a college worker, right? So, okay, so what is the average pay for these different levels? Okay, so you can see that for a high school graduate, median household income is 40 grand, and for somebody with a bachelor's degree, median household income is close to double that, is 80 grand. Okay, so let's just keep the numbers simple, use 40 grand and 80 grand. Okay, so I'm going to delete these values. Okay, let's start with the non-college option. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say we're going to get paid 40 grand. Okay, starting from year, let's call it year 1. Okay, and let's say, again, let's just do the calculation out to year 60. Okay, so again, we have these constant sort of $40,000 payments. Okay, and you can see the present value is diminishing rapidly, like it typically does. And then you can see here's my total present value from this entire income stream, and that is close to $400,000. Okay, so keep that number in mind. Okay, let's instead look at the alternative. So the alternative is to start being paid starting year, so you got 4 years of college, so we're going to be paid starting year 5 at $80,000. Okay, so let's see what the present value of that is. Extend this all the way down here. Okay, and you can see that it is greater. Okay, it is greater. So before it was close to 400,000, and now this number is basically, almost 550,000. Okay, but maybe it's not as much greater as you would have thought, right? Because look, you're being paid twice the amount each year, but your present value certainly isn't twice as much. Well, why is that? Well, it's because remember that the present value of a given number diminishes rapidly in time. Okay, and so these years where we lost, those $40,000 we could have been making, those years were very close to the present, and so their present value wasn't very diminished, right? So in other words, we're missing out on, this present value. If you want to think about it this way, we're missing out on these present value payments here that we could have been making with $40,000, and these are very large relative to the ones further down the list. Okay, and so in other words, because when we chose the college option, we're foregoing these payments that are very close to the present, then we're foregoing a lot of our present value versus, sacrificing payments way in the future, which would not have a very significant contribution to our present value. Okay, another way to think about that, if you want to think about it conceptually, right, is if instead of going to college, you start working earlier, that means you can start saving earlier. And those early periods of savings, those first 4 years of savings, once you compound them many, many years down the line, it'll actually amount to quite a bit of money. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. In the final video, we're going to see what happens to this whole situation when we add in the concept of diminishing marginal utility.